robotic or remote telescope experiences. I'm an education researcher, and so I'm the person who goes and collects evidence for lots of programs about research. And the one I'm going to talk about is actually a study of 4 different programs I'll tell you about that I've done. And my colleague, John Keller, who you might know through Recon, he unfortunately is at another conference today. We're kind of tag teaming and was sad he couldn't be here, but you'll get to see that. And so when we talk about research experiences, like I said, I study people who do research. Often when we're talking about research programs for teachers, so not for students, but for teachers, you want the teachers to have an authentic experience. And we can talk a lot about what that means to be authentic. But in the case that we're going to look at, they're actually doing research. They're not doing inquiry projects, but they're in observatories, in labs, doing research. And the goals of these programs are often, again, I'm going to have to generalize, to increase their content knowledge of that science, to help them understand how science is actually done. Many of our teachers coming through have they don't have experience doing research. They might have done a lab in college, but they don't actually have that time in a lab. They didn't do an REU, things like this. They have increased confidence engaging in science, but also engaging their own students. Because really, I think the reason we do these experiences is the goal for the students is to increase students' science knowledge and engagement and inquiry and actually doing research. So again, getting them that research experience before they even hit the university. That's the goal of these programs. So we talked about RETs, research experiences for teachers. Just to give you an idea, today I'm just going to talk about early career teachers. There are a lot of these for experienced teachers. Early career teachers, I'm going to call credential students. We call pre-service teachers, people who are student teaching, so they might have some time, and then teachers within the first 3 years, so what we might consider to be pre-tenure. Okay, so I say that they're all on a teaching path. They may not be actually committed to teaching. And so a lot of these are for people to help them maybe decide to stay in the classroom because they can do some really engaging things. Broadly, the research questions I'll talk about today, twofold. There are a lot of things I do look at, but how are these research experiences connected to changes in teachers' understanding of science inquiry and the nature of science? So framing kind of what Tim talked about as some of the things we want teachers to know. And then what do they intend to do when they walk out the door? But then what do they actually do? Because frankly, the best outcome, right, is what actually happens in classrooms. And this is really expensive and intensive work for those of you thinking about how to do that, right? 4 programs that I looked at between 2008 and last year. One was an archaeoastronomy program that I call CHACO, but it was an archaeoastronomy program. It was a week long, so very short when we think about these things. Residential program, they did lots of inquiry activities, but they did a research project working with a mentor. The second was the ARIBSI, which was after TL-RIBSI, so this is run by NOAO. Lots of you are familiar with this. This was, in fact, the last year they did it. This has a class that they do all semester, then a 10-day on-site residential program at Kitt Peak. They did field trips, and they did a research project with scientist mentors. This one's actually called AZ Start. I apologize. This one was a biology program in the University of Arizona labs, 8-week program, and they had training in labs and did seminars with a final poster presentation. And then the last one, which is John Keller's program, which is called STAR. This is the one that really engages our pre-service teachers in science and engineering. It's a 9-week program at national labs all over the United States. They have education workshops, final poster presentations. So you can see that the theme is working with real scientists in real labs, doing real research, often leading to publication, but it also has an education support component, which research suggests is very, very important to any kind of implementation. Okay, lots of data collection. I think a lot about data collection, and I'm happy to talk to you about. So there were 2 different nature of science surveys I used. One is what we would consider to be more open-ended. It's the views of nature of science developed by Lederman et al. The other is the SUSI. It's based on the same theoretical model of what we want people to know about the nature of science, but it is what we call a Likert scale. So it's a lot easier to score. It's a lot easier maybe to take. It's a lot quicker. You can do it with many more students or many more participants. Lots of different science teaching surveys, things like the STEBI, which is all about self-efficacy, some open-ended things, post-program surveys, right, reflections. I do a lot of observation on site. Artifact analysis, looking at teacher lesson plans, looking at student engagement, looking at student projects. I do interviews with all the facilitators and then participant interviews with focus groups. So both on-site and then anywhere from one. I have a longitudinal study going right now where I'm looking at 10 years out of some of these programs. So I do a lot of data collection. And so I'm just going to give you some broad findings, again, from these 10 different programs, the things that we have learned doing this. And so the first thing, when we look at nature of science, and these are what we consider to be kind of the factors on the SUSI, you can see that in the STAR program, which is where we use this, we saw a significant, statistically significant change in all of areas, which is positive, except for their understanding of theory. Not really surprising, but one of the things we find with this instrument is we get a ceiling effect. So a lot of the students who are in this program come in, they're very knowledgeable, which is why they get selected. And so we do see that even though it's significant, we have a lot of power, right? We have a lot of observations. And so even though we're seeing changes, they're very small. And we're having trouble seeing growth in that as well. I've also used the VNOS and the VOSI. So again, this is from Lederman and Schwartz. And when you start to get the more nuanced pieces from those open-ended, and this is really intensive to take, it takes about an hour. You have to do interviews and then you have to score it all, right? They don't shift really in their overall understanding of science, inquiry, and nature of science when we start to really look at these answers, right? Pages and pages and pages of response. They'll move a little, right? So we might be able to get them, but they're not, I guess, becoming graduate students, which makes sense. They're only in there for 8 weeks. But here's a really big take home. Participants' background in science and science research is definitely associated with being categorized as mostly informed views of science inquiry. What that means is if they came in really knowledgeable, they leave really knowledgeable. If they came in as a novice, they leave a little bit better, but not great. Changes to classroom practice. One really big thing, shift their goals for what they want for their students to be more effective. I want my students to experience what I experienced. I want them to like science. So it had a profound impact on what they want for their students, not so much what they want their students to learn, right? So not as much of a content goal. Post-program, when they leave, they intend to use less teacher-driven lessons, less of that lecture, and more other strategies like inquiry activities and student research. So that's awesome. And when we get these walking out the door, we all feel really good. But then what actually happens after they leave? Interestingly enough, right, so teachers intended to enact activities and lessons that were more like what they experienced. I'm inspired. Happens all the time. So their question is what happens? Interesting, they do, when we do the follow-up interviews and the surveys, they report implementing inquiry and inquiry activities, so engaging students in more learner engagement, but then provided by the research programs, but it was always adapted to serve their local context. So it might be I have one day, or they might get to do an entire research program. And then that research for the students encompassed, like I said, a wide range of activities. So you can see there are lots of things. This is data from STAR, where you can see on the left all the different things they were doing, these STAR teachers were doing related to research with their students and what they attributed to their actual research experience. So you can see that there is, for a lot of these, a high correlation, but they're doing all the things I want. I want my students to choose an investigation, to collect data, to analyze data, to have discourse around data. Okay. When we talk about student research, which actually gets done, teachers who report enacting research with their students have some really important factors. They have administrative support. It's okay to be doing it. They have material support. I have the money and resources to do it. And they have expert connections, maybe their mentor or someone in town or the robotics club. It's really important. Lack of research with students is related to their lack of knowledge doing science. They're still nervous about it. They have a perceived lack of time because they're being told what to do. They have a lack of administrative support, lack of expert support, and lack of materials. Those are the things that tell us why they don't do it. One thing I like to talk about, which I think is really important as a core of the kind of research I do, is that these experiences also contribute to their identity. And so participation in science research program actually impacts their identity. And I look at identities as narratives. I'd be happy to talk to you about that, about doing science, being a scientist, and teaching science. So it's positive, all these affective things that we really want. When we look at our STAR participants, over 90% report that this research experience made them feel like not only scientists, but part of what we call teacher researchers. So we don't want to turn these teachers into people who go to get PhDs. We actually want them to stay in the classroom. Take home message, right? Range of outcomes, all these things that we want are related to their prior experience, their confidence in teaching, and their specific research activities and their unique teaching context. So the point is, it really matters about the quality of the experience, the mentorship, and all the support they receive after the fact. And so, yes, engaging in science does result in some major changes for teachers, confidence, creating more engaging experience for their students. Different assessments are going to give you, as Tim mentioned, different information. So some have benefits and challenges. And I will tell you, from having done this for a long time, that more in-depth data collection is required for really nuanced findings. And so maybe not great news for those of you who want to do it, but that's that.
Okay, questions for Sanlyn? Just one clarification. Did you ask your educators, because the content knowledge is high, they're all qualified pre-service teachers in that, but did they have any exposure or any experience in a research environment prior to the program?
It's about 50-50. So
because you're like cherry picking the best, so but did they come in with research?
Right, so it is about 50-50. So about half of them had high school experiences, half of them had never, other than their biology 101 lab.
And so those outcomes, was that specific to the whole population, or did you look at the ones that had no research experience?
I looked at the ones, even the ones who had no research experience could get really good results, again, depending on their experience in the lab.
Thank you very much for your presentation on the data that you're showing us. One question I have, though, is most of us would like to have a higher success rate with teachers staying with a project for a long period of time after the support has gone away. If there's one thing that is missing from projects where you're seeing a big attrition rate, what's that one thing that's missing that teachers need to keep going?
That continued support. So very much like Louisa does with her program, where she has that year-long support. Can you be
specific when you say continued support, what you mean?
So telecons, flying them out, sending them to conferences. So something that STAR does really well is they take them to the California Science Teacher Association conference. That increased engagement not only keeps them in the classroom, but also keeps them engaged in that kind of networking and narrative with their colleagues. And so I'd say that kind of support is incredibly important.
Okay, time for one more question if someone has one.
I want to ask a related question, but from the point of view of the school districts and the administration that supports those teachers, what's the thing that's needed or missing in order to keep them engaged and keep them going?
So the big thing on administrative support, as you guys can all guess, is that problem with testing. And so being able to have more research that shows, as many people are doing, that this kind of experience can increase test scores, that's what's really going on, is that you have to have an administrator who is willing. And so one of the things I've seen some programs do is take administrators for kind of mini trips to show them how powerful these experiences are. And I highly, highly encourage you to engage administrators so that they support their teachers in having these experiences. Because I think when you have a social studies principal, they have no idea, but once they see it, they're bought in. And I am seeing a very successful program in Ohio that we've got an entire school district on board now because they brought the administrators, all of them, to a NASA center for a day, and that changed their whole mind.
Okay, let's thank Sanlyn.